I'm Prof Krugell of the School of Economics at the Noordwes-Universiteit Potchefstroom campus, and joining me today to talk about the budget is Prof Heymans, also of the School of Economics. Hello, Andre.
Hello, Waldo.
Yesterday, the Minister presented a budget with expenditure constraints and tax increases. How did we get to this?
Waldo, yes, it's been a long road. We've been seeing lots of hardships over the past couple of years. We've seen the budget come under constraint. We've seen a lot of things that actually pushed us into this situation. So the Minister didn't have a lot of room to maneuver yesterday. We've seen the debt of the country raising from about 20% of GDP to roughly 50% of GDP. So we've seen this debt burden getting bigger and bigger, and we've had discussions in the past as well how this influences the rating agencies and the rating of our credit. So we sit with this massive debt burden. On the other side, on the income side, we're sitting with lackluster economic growth. So on the income side, we're not seeing the income to generate enough funds to pay for this debt. So the Minister can only do so much. He's got to either increase income, or we've got to cut back on expenditure, or we've got to do something with current assets. So on the income side, they've done a bit in terms of taxes. We've now raised taxes, so the idea is to generate more income. On the expenditure side, we've seen a cut of about 10 billion rand to bring back that spending in order to get the funds, open the funds up to service this debt. So yes, we've seen some drastic measures from the Minister.
To my mind, one of the interesting things that I always tell the second years is to add to this is that South Africa typically has three big deficits. So there's the difference between tax and spending by government, which is in deficit. We import more than we export, and we invest more than we save. And you have to finance those deficits in a way, and I think what the Minister did yesterday was to try and plug three holes in a bigger macroeconomic perspective, and he really had little choice about how to do it. One of the interesting things was in the way in which he chose to do it, since he had a few options. To me, it was interesting that it was still a very progressive approach to distributing that tax burden. If you have a look at what the Minister did, it was increasing tax rates on top earners, particularly with a new top rate of 45% on people earning more than 1.5 million a year, and the old top bracket now becoming the second one at 41%, just above, I think, 700,000 or 800,000 rand. So in that way, very limited really relief for the middle income taxpayer. I think we also saw that there was little in terms of compensating for bracket creep. If inflation pushes up your salary, you're going to end up paying higher taxes in the year to come. But then the burden really going towards the higher income groups. Any other interesting tax stuff that caught your eye?
Yes, well, in terms of room for maneuverability, the Minister didn't really have much else to do. If we look at the income of the government, they generate a lot of the funds from personal income tax. I think it's about 37 to 38%. About 25 to 28% comes from VAT, and then the rest is made up by corporate income tax, about 15 to 18%, and this varies over different years. In terms of where he could have spent or where he could have increased taxes, you can't really touch VAT. The moment that you touch VAT, you have an unequal distribution again, poorer people being hit harder than rich people in terms of the VAT burden. In terms of corporate taxes, you can't really tax the corporates even more, because with the really bad economic growth we've been seeing, companies can easily then just downscale or even close, and then we see extra pressure on unemployment. So the Minister didn't really have a lot of choice as to where he's going to find that extra tax income. So we've seen the income now coming from personal income tax, as you just mentioned, as well as an increase on the fuel levy. We've also seen a little bit of redistribution from rich to poor, because he increased the tax on dividends, going from 15% to 20% on dividends. So yes, we've really seen this this constrained story, the minister not having a lot of options open to him. And I think within the options that he had available, he did do a good job. On the income side, though, you've mentioned earlier that income as well play a role in plugging these holes.
Absolutely, and I think where he already told us in the mini budget in October last year that he's going to have to increase taxes, and the Davis Commission has been investigating it for a while now. We also saw some interesting sort of smaller taxes. The sugar tax that was already on the table in last year's budget now has a bit more detail, and it seems that it's open for more consulting in the year to come, which is quite interesting. So I think there's still some action left on the income side of the budget. What is on the spending side, he really stick with the story of the mini budget. I think he also said that it stays within the envelope that he already outlined in October. So there was very little changes there that was interesting. He tried to protect the social wage, so the money going into transfers and social grants. He tried to protect that and allocating a bit more for that. But everything else is really just treading water. We know about the additional money for higher education, but aside from that, there wasn't much action. Even on I had a look on the infrastructure spending side. There's some money allocated over the 3-year period, but tapering in projects where there's underspending, which in a way is worrying for investing in long-run growth.
Yes, so we also see this budget rolling out a longer-term plan. The minister is clearly aware that in the short term we've got to make some sacrifices, increasing the taxes, given that we've got economic growth problems. He's trying to get the show back on the road. He's trying to plug the holes, but we have to take notice of, and I think as a country also do our bit to realize this longer term plan. And he's got a good plan. In the longer term, what is definite threats to the country and economic growth is our rating, our credit rating. So if we want to show the credit rating agencies that we are serious about transforming this economy from one that's struggling into a growth economy, we have to take the short-term hits. And that we can only accomplish by doing what the minister's been doing.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's almost in a way comical and interesting that there are people who are critical of the minister as if he could have done much else. He was really in a bind. Whether it's really going to convince the ratings agencies, we'll see. But I think from the fiscal side, this is as much as you can do. Everything else now becomes much more important. Whether it's local level service delivery or the management of parastatals or the quality of primary and secondary education, the minister can sort of throw some money in that direction, but the management of that and really making the South African economy more competitive is out of his hands now, and everybody else needs to do their bit. I'm always worried that South Africans have this thing that will muddle through, where the through almost implies that you will reach some sort of destination that you prefer. I'm more worried that there is no through if we keep on muddling, that you actually get stuck in a low growth trap.
Absolutely, and I do think that you're absolutely correct in that it's now becoming a citizen issue. The market showed us that they're happy with what the minister said. If you look at the rand, which is a very good indicator of what the markets outside the country and also investors think of things that happen in the country, you can see that the rand strengthened somewhat. But to my mind, that's the more important bit is that it remained fairly stable. We see that the rand is very sensitive to any external shocks. So this is something, I think this is a budget being put on the table that the market likes. It now comes back to what you say, that we have to, private companies, the public sector, everyone has got to do their bit to make this growth plan a reality.
Andre, thank you very much for your views.
Thank you, Robin.